The day I bought my family's house was the day I realized I had been living as a stranger in my own home for 7 years. I had just turned 29 when this story began. My name is Grain, and for 7 years, I had been the invisible backbone holding up a family that never learned to stand on its own. Every morning at 5:30, I would wake up in the converted basement of our duplex on Maple Street in suburban Ohio, put on my scrubs, and head to street. Mary's Hospital, where I worked as a certified nursing assistant. The 12-hour shifts were brutal, but my $42,000 salary kept our family afloat. Our family consisted of my father Frank, whose pride never recovered from his heart attack 3 years earlier, forcing him into early retirement. There was my mother Susan, who had perfected selective blindness during family conflicts. My brother Kevin, 24, was perpetually 2 semesters from finishing his business degree, a timeline that had stretched into its 6th year. And Ashley, my 21-year-old sister, whose primary occupation was curating her Instagram and complaining about Wi-Fi speed. The duplex was modest, 2 stories that had seen better decades. We lived in Unit A, while Unit B had been vacant for 8 months. I had moved back after college, initially for a few months to help after Dad's heart attack. Those months became years, and I unconsciously assumed the role of family provider. It started small, a grocery bill here, a utility payment there. But as Dad's disability proved insufficient, and Mom's part-time library job barely covered her expenses, my contributions grew until I subsidized the entire household. The morning of the breaking point started like any other. I had just finished a grueling night shift and was exhausted. As I walked through the front door, I was greeted by familiar family discord. Ashley sprawled across the couch, sighing at her laptop. Kevin rummaged through kitchen cabinets frantically. Dad sat in his recliner, clicking through channels with irritated precision. Finally, Ashley announced without looking up, "Grain, the Wi-Fi is being completely ridiculous. This is seriously affecting my engagement rates." I opened the freezer, retrieving a 99-cent microwavable pasta dish. As I peeled back the plastic, Kevin appeared beside me. "Hey sis, quick question," he said casually. "There's this game this weekend. Tickets are only $60, and I promise I'll pay you back when my student aid comes through." I paused. $60 wasn't trivial when living paycheck to paycheck, and Kevin's repayment promises had become unreliable. "I just transferred money for your tuition this week," I said quietly. "My account is pretty low." "Come on, it's just $60, Kevin persisted. "It's not like you ever do anything fun anyway." Before I could respond, Dad's voice boomed from the living room. "Grain, what's the deal with the cable? Half the sports channels aren't working. The company said something about a payment issue." I felt the familiar chest tightness. The cable bill was $187 monthly for Dad's premium package. I had been juggling payments for weeks. "I'll call them tomorrow," I said, removing my still-cold dinner from the microwave. "Tomorrow?" Dad's voice rose. "The game's tonight. I've been looking forward to this all week." I walked into the living room, still holding my plastic container. "Dad, we need to talk about the budget. I can't keep covering everything." Between mortgage, utilities, groceries, Kevin's school, and everyone's expenses, I'm stretched too thin. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire everyone was pretending not to notice. Dad slowly rose from his recliner, familiar flush creeping up his neck. "Budget? You want to talk about budget?" "Yes," I said, though my voice wavered. "We need a more sustainable way to handle household expenses." Frank stepped closer, his face reddening. "Sustainable? You live here rent-free, Grain. You eat our food, use our electricity, sleep under our roof. And you want to lecture me about sustainability?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. Rent-free. I had been paying the mortgage for 3 years. I had covered Dad's credit card debt after his heart attack. "Rent-free?" I repeated, barely above a whisper. "Dad, I've been paying the mortgage for 3 years. I paid off your credit card debt. I buy groceries for this family every week." "Don't play the victim with me," Frank shot back, voice rising. "You're just a leech, Grain, always acting like some kind of saint. If you're so tired of helping your family, then maybe it's time you found somewhere else to live." The words landed with devastating force. Kevin actually nodded in agreement. "Yeah, Grain, you do kind of make it seem like you're doing us this huge favor." Ashley held up her phone, apparently recording. "This is definitely going on my story. Family drama gets such good engagement." But Mom's reaction cut deepest. She simply turned and walked back to the kitchen. I heard running water, meaning she was washing clean dishes, her way of avoiding conflict. I stood there, still holding my pathetic frozen dinner, surrounded by people who shared my DNA but viewed me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. Something inside me shifted. Not anger exactly, though anger was part of it, more like sudden clarity, as if someone had turned on lights in a room where I'd been stumbling in darkness. I didn't cry or shout back. Instead, I looked directly at my father, then at each family member. Then I walked to my basement room, closed the door, and began packing. I owned less than I'd realized. 7 years of funding family expenses left little room for personal purchases. My clothes fit in 2 suitcases. Books, documents, and sentimental items filled one box. By 3 a.m., I had reduced my life to belongings that could fit in my Honda Civic. I left while everyone slept. No note, no announcement, no dramatic confrontations. I simply disappeared. My friend Jessica lived 20 minutes away near the hospital. At 4 a.m., I stood outside her door with my suitcases, feeling like a refugee from my own life. Jessica took one look at my face and stepped aside without questions. Over the next 3 hours, I systematically dismantled the financial structure supporting my family. I removed myself from the joint checking account, canceled automatic payments for mortgage, utilities, cable, internet, and Kevin's tuition. I suspended grocery delivery orders. Then I changed my phone number. For a week, I existed in suspended animation, working and trying to process what happened. The first contact came through email. Kevin's card was being declined. What the hell is going on? My card isn't working and tuition got rejected. This isn't funny, Grain. Then came a voicemail from Mom on Jessica's phone. Her voice was shaky. Grain, sweetheart, please come home. Your father is stressed, and his blood pressure is up. We need to work this out as a family. Ashley's contribution was a TikTok video Jessica showed me. My sister had filmed herself in our darkened living room with the caption, "Praying for my family during this difficult time, number family struggle." But it was the call from Richard Morrison, Dad's insurance agent, that changed everything. Grain, I'm sorry to tell you this. His voice was careful. Your father removed you as beneficiary from his life insurance last year. He said it was because of concerns about your financial stability. The words hit me like ice water. When exactly did this happen, Richard? Last September. He came into my office specifically to make the change. Said you were having trouble managing your own finances and he didn't want to burden you with that kind of responsibility. Richard paused. He also mentioned that Kevin was getting more stable and would be a better choice as beneficiary. Kevin, who had never held a job for more than 6 months, who had been in college for 6 years, who asked me for money for football tickets while I was paying his tuition. Richard, you know I've been making his mortgage payments for 3 years, right? And that I paid off his credit card debt after his heart attack? There was a long, uncomfortable silence. I didn't know that, Grain. He told me you were struggling to pay your own bills and that the family was supporting you while you got back on your feet. I almost laughed at the bitter irony. My financial instability. The man who hadn't made a mortgage payment in 3 years was concerned about my financial stability. But more than that, he had been actively telling people that I was the one being supported, when the truth was the exact opposite. After hanging up, I sat in Jessica's kitchen staring at the wall for hours. This wasn't just about money or stress. This was about being systematically erased from my family's future while funding their present. But it was more than that. Dad had been actively rewriting history, telling people that I was the burden, the one who needed help, while secretly benefiting from my financial support. I thought about all the times I had felt guilty for asking basic questions about our budget, all the times I had apologized for not being able to cover an expense immediately, all the times I had felt like I wasn't doing enough, even while I was supporting 4 adults. Dad had made me feel like I was the problem, like I was ungrateful and demanding, while simultaneously depending on my paycheck to keep the family afloat. The manipulation was breathtaking in its completeness. He had managed to make me feel guilty for supporting him while positioning himself as the generous father dealing with a difficult daughter. No wonder I had felt so confused and upset all the time. I had been living in an alternate reality, where up was down and generosity was selfishness. That night, I decided to buy my family's house. The next morning, I spoke with a loan officer. Despite supporting my family, I had maintained excellent credit and substantial retirement savings. I qualified for a business loan for investment property. I established Northwood Property Management LLC, with no connection to my family. It took 6 weeks, but by October, I owned the duplex on Maple Street. My family had no idea. They had been struggling since my departure, but pride prevented direct contact. Dad negotiated payment plans with creditors, while Mom picked up extra library hours. Kevin deferred classes, and Ashley discovered social media couldn't pay for premium Wi-Fi. The eviction notice was delivered by process server on a gray Tuesday in November. Northwood Property Management informed tenants that the property was sold and their lease wouldn't be renewed. They had 60 days to vacate. According to my friend Marcus, who lived in the neighborhood, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Dad had answered the door, confident it was some kind of mistake or scam. He had apparently laughed at first, telling the process server that he owned the house and couldn't be evicted from his own property. When the server handed him the legal documents and explained that the property had indeed been sold, Dad's demeanor changed completely. Marcus said he could hear shouting from inside the house for hours afterward. Ashley had apparently posted a series of increasingly frantic social media updates about predatory companies targeting struggling families and asking for prayers and legal advice. Kevin had driven around the neighborhood asking if anyone knew anything about Northwood Property Management. Mom had spent the afternoon calling various city offices, the bank, and even the police, convinced that someone had stolen their house through some kind of elaborate fraud. The irony was that she was partly right. Someone had taken their house. It just happened to be someone they knew very well. The truth was simpler. Dad never actually owned the house. When he fell behind after his heart attack, I had negotiated with the bank to take over the loan. The house had been legally mine for 3 years, though I'd never mentioned this. It took them 6 weeks to find my new address. I was living in a modest apartment near the hospital when I saw them waiting by my car. Dad, Mom, Kevin, and Ashley, standing like an intervention committee. Dad looked older, with new stress lines around his eyes. Grain, this tantrum has gone far enough. We need to resolve this situation. I walked toward them slowly. What situation is that, Dad? Don't play games. This whole thing with the house. Call your friend at this property company and tell them to back off. I stopped 6 feet away. I can't do that. Why not? Ashley demanded. I reached into my purse, pulling out brand new keys to the house and a folded deed to 1247 Maple Street, with Northwood Property Management LLC as owner. I can't call them off because I am them. The house is mine. The silence was profound. Kevin's mouth fell open. Ashley stopped scrolling. Mom stepped backward. Dad's face went through several color changes. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. You're right. I didn't have that money because I'd been spending it on mortgage payments and credit card debt and tuition for 3 years. But once I stopped, it turned out I had quite a bit saved. How could you do this to your own family? Mom whispered. Do what exactly? Buy the house I'd been paying for? Take legal ownership of something I'd been financially responsible for since Dad's heart attack? I looked directly at Dad. You want to know what we're going to do? I'll give you the same choice you gave me. You can stay as my tenants. Rent is $2,500 monthly due on the 1st, or you can leave. I let the words hang, a perfect echo of the ultimatum delivered to me months earlier. $2,500? Ashley squeaked. We can't afford that. Then you'll need to figure something out, the same way I had to when I was told I could leave if I didn't like things. This is blackmail, Dad said. No, this is business, the same way it was business when you removed me from your insurance policy while living off my money. I turned and walked toward my apartment, leaving them in the parking lot. Over the next month, my family moved in with my Aunt Martha, who had never liked me much. Kevin took a part-time job at a hardware store. Ashley gave up her latest iPhone. Dad struggled with accepting help after a lifetime of pride. Meanwhile, I discovered what my life looked like when it belonged entirely to me. I had the duplex completely renovated over winter. Unit A became a bright, modern space. The process was both practical and deeply emotional. Every decision I made was a choice that no one could question or override. I chose light gray paint instead of the dark, depressing colors Dad had always preferred. I replaced the old carpet with hardwood floors that gleamed in the natural light. I updated the kitchen with appliances that actually worked instead of the ancient refrigerator that had been held together with duct tape and hope. Walking through the space where I had grown up, but seeing it transformed according to my own vision, was incredibly healing. This was the same basement where I had lived for 7 years, but now it was bright and welcoming instead of feeling like a cave where I hid from family drama. The kitchen where I had heated up countless 99-cent frozen dinners was now a space where I could actually cook meals I enjoyed. Unit B I rented to David and Maria, young teachers who paid on time and sent thank you cards. When the heater broke during a particularly cold January week, they called to report it politely, and thanked me profusely when I had it repaired within 24 hours. The contrast with my family's constant demands and complaints was striking. For the first time in years, I had money left after bills. Real money. I opened savings, increased retirement contributions, and bought a new car. But more importantly, I rediscovered coming home to space that was truly mine. No one would demand money for football tickets. No one would complain about internet speeds. No one would pile their problems on top of mine. The silence was golden. In March, I received a text from Kevin. Grain, can we please talk? Things have been really hard since you left. Dad's having chest pains again. We miss you. I stared at the message before responding. I'm sorry about Dad's health. You can reach me through email for real emergencies. Please, we want to work this out. We're family. Family members treat each other with respect. I wrote back. Family members don't use each other as ATM machines. When you're ready for a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial convenience, let me know. I didn't hear from them for months. Summer brought a routine I'd never experienced. Leisure time. I joined a hiking group, took pottery classes, and dated a radiology technician named James who insisted on paying for dinner. In August, I sat on my apartment balcony with wine and a novel I'd bought without calculating affordability. My phone buzzed. Rent payment received. $2,500 from Unit B. I smiled. David and Maria were excellent tenants, and their payment covered my mortgage with money left over. It was strange that the house where I grew up now generated income instead of draining resources. As the sun set, I felt something missing for years. Peace. Not exhausted quiet after managing everyone's problems, but genuine tranquility from knowing my life belonged to me. My phone rang. An unknown local number. Hello? Grain? It's Mom. I set down my wine and waited. I'm calling from Martha's phone. I wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. What about it? Martha's hosting, and she wanted to know if you'd join us. I considered sitting around Martha's table, pretending the past year hadn't happened while avoiding mention of me owning the house where half the guests used to live. I don't think that would be a good idea. Grain, it's been almost a year. Don't you think it's time we moved past this? Moved past what, exactly? Long pause. This whole situation. This disagreement. Mom, this wasn't a disagreement about movies. This was about fundamental respect and financial abuse. Financial abuse? How can you say that? We're your family. Being family doesn't give you the right to exploit someone financially, and it certainly doesn't give you the right to call them names when they ask for equity. Your father has been having a really hard time. I'm sorry to hear that, but Dad's emotional state isn't my responsibility anymore. He's been talking about maybe apologizing, if that would help. I almost laughed at the conditional offer. Mom, I appreciate you calling, but I need you to understand something. I'm not angry, but I'm also not available to resume my role as the family's financial safety net. If Dad wants to apologize because he genuinely recognizes his behavior was hurtful, I'm willing to listen. But if he wants to apologize as a strategy to get me paying bills again, we have nothing to discuss. In December, exactly 1 year after serving eviction papers, Dad called. Grain? It's your father. His voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. Hi, Dad. I was wondering if we could meet and talk, just you and me. What did you want to talk about? I think I owe you an apology, a real one. We met at a coffee shop near the hospital. Dad looked older than his 62 years, hands shaking slightly as he lifted his cup. I've been thinking about what happened, he began, about the things I said, the way I acted. I waited. I was wrong. About calling you names, taking you for granted. About the insurance thing. Richard told me he talked to you about that. Yes, he did. Dad's face reddened with embarrassment. That was wrong. I was angry about being dependent, about not providing like I used to. I took that out on you instead of being grateful. He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. I also told Richard some things about your financial situation that weren't true. I made it sound like you were the one who needed help, when really, it was the other way around. This admission surprised me. I hadn't expected him to acknowledge the lies he had told. Why did you do that, Dad? He stared into his coffee cup. Pride, I guess. It was easier to let people think you were struggling than to admit that my 29-year-old daughter was supporting me. It made me feel like less of a failure. He looked up at me. But that doesn't make it right. I know that now. It wasn't eloquent, but it seemed genuine. Thank you for saying that. I want to make things right between us. I don't know how, but I want to try. And I want you to know that I've told Richard the truth about everything. I've corrected the record about who was really supporting whom. I studied his face for manipulation, but saw only exhaustion and regret. Dad, I'm glad you came with this. But making things right doesn't mean going back to how things were. I can't and won't resume my role as the family's financial provider. I understand now. We've been managing on our own since you left. It's been hard, but we're figuring it out. Good, that's good. We sat in silence, both unsure how to navigate this new dynamic. Would you be willing to have dinner with us sometime? At Martha's place, as a family. Maybe, but only if everyone understands this is about rebuilding relationships, not resuming financial responsibilities. Yes, absolutely. And Dad, if anyone mentions money or asks for financial help, I'll leave immediately and we won't try this again. He nodded vigorously. I'll make sure everyone knows. As we parted, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of forgiveness. Recognition that people could change, even slowly and with prompting. I spent Christmas in my renovated house on Maple Street, surrounded by my belongings and choices. I cooked elaborate dinner, watched movies I wanted to watch, and called Jessica about Dad's apology. How do you feel about it? Cautiously optimistic, but mostly, I feel proud of myself for sticking to my boundaries. You should be proud. You've completely transformed your life. That evening, I received a group text from my siblings. Ashley and Kevin had coordinated to send me a photo from Christmas at Martha's with, "Missing you today. Hope you're doing well." I looked at the picture for a long time. My family was gathered around Martha's tree, but something was different. There was less entitlement in Kevin's face, less casual disregard in Ashley's pose. They looked like people who had learned about consequences. I typed back, "Thank you for thinking of me. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas." It wasn't an invitation to resume old patterns, but acknowledgement that relationships could evolve and heal, given time and genuine effort. On New Year's Eve, I hosted a small party in my renovated house. As we raised glasses at midnight, I found myself thinking about new beginnings and second chances. To choices, I said, offering my toast, to the courage to change what isn't working, and to the wisdom to appreciate what we've built. As my friends echoed the sentiment, I looked around at the space I had created. The walls were painted in colors I had chosen. The furniture was arranged according to my preferences. Most importantly, the life I was living was mine. Every decision, every priority, every financial choice was made according to my own values and goals. I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's story. I was the author of my own narrative, and I was writing a story worth reading. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. It required confronting uncomfortable truths about family dynamics, setting boundaries that felt selfish, and prioritizing my well-being over others' comfort. But in choosing myself, I discovered I was worth choosing. As the party wound down, I stood washing dishes that belonged to me in a house that belonged to me. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet except for distant fireworks marking the new year. The journey from victim to victor hadn't been about revenge, though revenge played a role early on. It had been about learning to value myself enough to demand others value me too. About recognizing that enabling dysfunction isn't the same as showing love, and that helping people avoid consequences is often the cruelest kindness. My family had learned to function without my financial support because they were forced to learn. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop making their lives so easy they never have to grow. As I turned off lights and headed upstairs, I felt deep contentment from knowing I'd made the right choice, even when it required enormous courage. I had lost a family dynamic that was comfortable and familiar, but gained something far more valuable, a life that belonged entirely to me. The deed to my house, framed on my bedroom wall, served as daily reminder of what was possible when you finally decided to put your own oxygen mask on first. Every morning, I saw my name on that document, proof that I had built something solid with my own choices. I had learned to choose myself without apology, to set boundaries without guilt, and to recognize my own worth without external validation. These were lessons that would serve me for life, long after the specific circumstances that taught them were behind me. And that, I realized as I drifted off to sleep in my own house on the street where I grew up, was the sweetest victory of all.